So you have a very interesting story in terms of how when you first graduated from law school, and then you got that job as a prosecutor, and then that Black Swan event happened. You want to tell the people about like how that went down?
So if you want to do criminal law, right, the conventional route is to become a prosecutor first. And the understanding is you'll get a whole ton of courtroom experience and trial experience because you'll be trying all these cases on behalf of the government, right, trying to put people in jail and other things. And then once you do that, you won't make any money when you do it, but when you're done, you can graduate and you'll have a ton of experience and you can go on and do other things.
Right.
And so that's what I did. So I tried to become a prosecutor, and in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn DA's office is a well-known prosecutorial office in New York City. I interned there many times. I ultimately got an interview with a guy named Charles Hines, who was the Brooklyn DA for, I don't know, 30 years. I guess 89 he was elected or came into office. He left 2013, so do the math. It was a long time, nearly 20 years. And every X amount of years, it was 4 years, he would run for office and you know, get reelected. And I interviewed with him in 2012, and I got the job. And this is, again, if you want to do criminal law, this is the job. So it's very hard to get this job. I think the year that I applied, 4,000 applicants applied and 50 get the job.
That's
so
crazy.
It's virtually impossible. And I'm not good with numbers in terms of, you know, there are statistics that weigh against the minority that I'm usually not in the minority. You know what I mean? Like I usually don't get that position.
Exactly.
But I got this one. And so I interviewed with him and I sat down with him and he goes, all right, look, there are 2 ways that you can not be a DA come next year. I said, okay. He said, you got to pass the bar.
Okay.
Because you got to be admitted to practice. And I got to get reelected. So I said, okay, strange conditions. But he sent me the offer letter. I signed the offer letter.
Of course.
I passed the bar. And then I was looking at the history. And the last time a Brooklyn DA got unelected was 1911. So it was over 100 years prior to when I was.
So the odds were definitely in your favor.
So I was like, okay, I mean, what are the chances? I can't be the one, you know. And Charles Hines is a guy who, in the press, had a tough history in terms of selectively prosecuting and not complying with kind of advanced methods to justice, right? And you know, you can have a debate as to whether or not that's true. But ultimately, he ran against a guy named Ken Thompson, who was a civil rights lawyer and a former federal prosecutor, who's no longer alive. He passed from cancer for several years after being elected. So he won this election, and then I got an email from his staff saying, you can meet with us and we'll see if we'll keep you on. I met with him. He told me, well, I'm not telling you you're not getting the job, but if you have another offer, take that one. I said, well, then I should probably think I'm not getting the job. And so I didn't get the job. And so the problem is that whole process lasted over a year. So I was interviewing, kind of, but you can't really interview because as soon as somebody hears that you have this really, really hot job lined up, they're not going to hire you because they know that they're the contingency plan and nobody wants that.
While you were interviewing that?
Well, you have to be honest. You can't lie to people. You know?
They ask, oh, like, you know.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't remember exactly how it went down, but oftentimes I would volunteer that information because what's the point of the rest of the interview, you know? And so I was interviewing. I wasn't getting any real good jobs. I got a few offers, but they weren't anything that I was interested in really. And so ultimately what happened is I lost out on that job. And because I couldn't get another job, I had to start out on my own because that's the only thing you can do when you can't find work. Pretty much. It turned out to be a blessing in disguise, thank God. I'm now over a decade in, and it's been great. But, you know, tough time. What can I say? Time of uncertainty.
Yeah, I know. That must be tough. Like, you finish law school, you think you have a job lined up, and then all of a sudden you pivot. Like,
and that job. I mean, it's tough to get a job like that. That's a real desirable job.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know how it is now. I hear now that it's not as desirable. Back then, it was a really big deal.
So kind of take us back to like your mentality at the time, like when all this like news was coming out, like you were like your future is kind of uncertain. Like, how did you like kind of get through that, man?
You try to do everything you can. I've always been a go-getter. So I tried to do everything I can and talk to people that maybe would have some insight into what I should do. But ultimately, you kind of just have to, you know, throw yourself to the forces of the world. Like, what can you do? You know, you're in Brooklyn. People are going to vote. And I can't control an election. And so I said, you know, look, let me think ahead. If this happens, I'll open up on my own. And I started putting that into place already. So by the time this happened, my wife always tells me, you took it so well. I don't know if I took it well, but I landed on my feet pretty quickly because I was preparing for the worst. I do that a lot in life.
Most definitely. Yeah, I got to pray for the best, but
Prepare for the worst.
Prepare for the worst.
I prepare for the worst and everything.